So we start, of course, on this election day in Virginia. We could see a sign of what to expect in the midterm elections next year and maybe even the presidential election in 2024.
Voters in Virginia are casting ballots for control of the governor's mansion. Last night, Republican candidate Glenn Youngkin delivered his closing message in Northern Virginia, while Democrat and former Governor Terry McAuliffe was in the state capital, Richmond. McAuliffe's once commanding lead has evaporated, paving the way for a neck-and-neck race. One of the big issues Youngkin has been pushing in this race, control over schools and what kids are being taught.
No. This is a moment for Virginians to push back on this left liberal progressive agenda and take our Commonwealth back.
What bothers me to my core is what this man is doing. He's dividing parents against parents, parents against school boards. He's using your children as political pawns in his campaign. It is a racist dog whistle.
NBC News correspondent Heidi Presbella joins us now from a polling location in Virginia Beach, which is a purple city inside what, at least right now, is a purple swing state. So, Heidi, remind us, why is this race in the national spotlight right now? What makes it so important? All right. Not sure if we have Heidi right now. We will see if we can check back with her in just a little bit.
Virginia is always, if not a bellwether, because it's not always a bellwether, but it is definitely a proxy for what the national mood is.
All right. We're having some technical issues, so we will move on.
Hopefully we can come back to Heidi. Yeah, well, now let's do a deep dive. We'll kick it off with Steve Kornacki, of course, a familiar face on an election day, NBC News political correspondent, and he is with us at the big board. Steve, good morning. So, of course, this marquee contest on a busy election day is the race for Virginia governor. What do we know from the polls right now?
Yeah, polls say this thing is coming right down to the wire. Glenn Youngkin, the Republican, against Terry McAuliffe, the Democrat. The poll average actually has Youngkin up by a very, very small amount coming in today. Basically means this is a dead even race, but Glenn Youngkin does have a shot. The Republicans have a shot, and this is notable, in a state that Joe Biden won by 10 points last year. This wasn't just a Biden win. This was a double-digit Biden win. What are we going to be looking for as the results come in tonight? About 7 o'clock Eastern, by the way. We expect a lot of votes to start coming in right when polls close in Virginia. A couple things I'm going to be looking at tonight. Number one, right here, circling these blue counties right outside Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia. This is the population center, really, of Virginia. A lot of people here. There's been a long-term trend in this area away from the Republicans toward the Democrats. But during Donald Trump's presidency, that trend accelerated. Democrats drove up massive margins in this part of the state. It's why Biden was able to win so comfortably. So one thing we're going to be looking for when those results come into tonight, here's the question. Has Glenn Youngkin, have the Republicans been able to win back a critical number of the suburban voters they gave up during Donald Trump's presidency? I'll give you an example. You were just playing there, Youngkin at that rally in Loudoun County last night. This is where he closed his campaign. He closed his campaign in Northern Virginia, in a county that Joe Biden won by 25 points last year. Take a look at what Loudoun County looked like before Donald Trump came along. This is back in 2012. It was a swing county. Mitt Romney, the Republican, came within 4 points of winning Loudoun County. Donald Trump comes along. Republicans now losing Loudoun County by 25 points. Can Glenn Youngkin, can Republicans make inroads in Loudoun and in Northern Virginia? And the other key thing we're going to be looking for tonight is it is true that in the big population hubs, Northern Virginia, Richmond suburbs, Democrats made the big gains in the Trump era. But Southwest Virginia, Shenandoah Valley, there are parts of Virginia where Republicans actually did make gains during Donald Trump's presidency. Counties where Trump was doing 20, 30, even in some cases 40 points better than Mitt Romney did back in 2012. The other question is, when you look at rural Southwest Virginia, has Glenn Youngkin managed to keep those Trump levels of support? Because that's what Republicans need to pull this off. They need to maintain the support that Trump gained in rural Virginia, and they need to win back. They're under no illusions. They don't think they're going to win them all back, but they need to win back enough suburban voters in Northern Virginia. That's how a Republican could win back Virginia. We'll find out if Glenn Youngkin did it.
We certainly will. A lot to watch for tonight. You're going to have a late night.
You got it. I'm looking forward to it, though.
We'll be getting our updates from you. Steve Kornacki, as always, thank you for kicking us off on an election day.
Thank you.
NBC News correspondent Heidi Presbella joins us now from a polling location in Virginia Beach, which is Purple City inside what is at least right now a swing state. So, Heidi, why is this race in the national spotlight? What makes it so important?
Virginia is always, if not a bellwether, at least a proxy for the national mood. This is the first chance that voters have to cast their referendum on the new administration. And losing doesn't necessarily predict the midterms for Democrats, but it certainly would not be a great segue. It also tests whether Trump is still a powerful motivator for those suburban women who Steve Kornacki just mentioned. So just a lot of national themes that come into this race.
Heidi, voters have been turning out for early voting in large numbers. I know it's really early there right now, but what are you seeing? Are they fired up? What's the enthusiasm level?
Well, there was a line here outside this polling location starting at 6 a.m. for folks to get in. Look, off year elections, you always have the more loyal, the more passionate voters, and we've already talked to them on both sides. For Republicans, that issue is education. And the notion that parents don't have control of what's happening in the curriculum and classrooms. For Democrats, it's still this feeling that Trump and Trumpism is an existential threat. Take a listen to voters who we talked to on both sides.
Definitely the education, what the parents have an ability to say so, and that resonated with me. Typically, I do vote Republican all the time.
Just about everything. I mean, we can talk about the vaccine or the pandemic or whatever. We can talk about schools. We can talk about the economy. All of those issues. I'm concerned about my children and my grandchildren.
So as you can see, folks are moving in here, even in the 7 a.m. hour and voting. And here's the thing that will be hard to predict, though, about today is whereas in 2020, a lot of the voting by Democrats took place early or absentee. This year, Republicans are urging their voters to do the same thing. So it's going to be really hard to gauge what a big turnout at actual polling locations means.
And Heidi, quickly, we just heard that one voter talk about education. We heard the candidates talking about it. Is that a big issue from what you're hearing from voters?
Education, absolutely. Look, when do you have an election where education is the top issue? It vaulted 9 points just within a matter of weeks, and it's an issue primarily for Republicans, but for Democrats as well, with the pushback saying that this issue of critical race theory being taught in schools is all just a made-up dog whistle. For Republicans, they really believe it's happening, even though many of them who I interviewed were not able to give specific evidence of what it is about the curriculum that constitutes critical race theory. Joe.
All right. Heidi reporting from Virginia Beach. Thank you.
And tonight, Chuck Todd and Kristen Welker host special election night coverage following the key races across the nation and what the results mean for the direction of the country. Stream the Meet the Press Election Night special tonight at 9 Eastern right here on NBC News Now.
President Biden is pushing for major climate reform on a global stage this morning, speaking at the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow. In his first remarks yesterday, the president promised decisive action to fight the worsening climate crisis, urging world leaders to make bigger commitments.
There's no more time to hang back or sit on the fence or argue amongst ourselves. This is the challenge of our collective lifetimes, the existential threat to human existence as we know it. And every day we delay, the cost of inaction increases.
Scientists warn the time to act is rapidly running out, but some of the world's biggest climate polluters, like China and Russia, are largely absent from the summit. NBC News correspondent Josh Letterman joins us now from Edinburgh. He covers climate policy in the Biden administration. So, Josh, the president spoke again just this morning. He and other world leaders have made some big commitments so far. So how much tangible action has been promised, and what can we expect to see now over the next 10 days there?
Today, Biden will unveil his pledge to...
Well, one example of that tangible action, Joe, is that deforestation effort the president was talking about just a few minutes ago here in Scotland. These world nations gathering here, pledging to end deforestation by 2030. But frankly, that's a commitment that nations have made as far back as 2015 without taking a whole lot of action. The other big move we're expecting today is an announcement that more than 80 nations have joined an effort that the U.S. and the European Union forged together to reduce methane pollution, which is a big contributor to global warming, because methane, although we don't talk about it as much as carbon dioxide, actually far more powerful at trapping heat in the atmosphere than carbon dioxide. And as far as the U.S. side of that, the Biden administration announcing just today that it is going to take unprecedented action to regulate not only new sources of methane, like new oil and gas wells that are being drilled, but also to extend those regulations to existing sources, like wells that have been already in the ground and could be leaking methane. That's the first time the U.S. has done that, and it's one of the ways Biden is trying to show that he is taking tangible action here at the Climate Summit in Scotland.
So, Josh, this is a big moment for the president. He's trying to reestablish the U.S. as a leader in fighting climate change after former President Trump withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement. How are other leaders responding to the U.S. recommitting to climate talks? Do they trust the U.S., or is there some skepticism?
It's a little bit of both. There's definitely a sense of relief that the president has brought the U.S. back into the game on climate change. He put the U.S. back in the Paris Climate Agreement, and he's trying to lead here in Scotland. But on the other hand, these countries have watched the U.S. seesaw on climate change as power has shifted in Washington for years now. And they know that President Trump, the former president, could run again, could very well be president again. And so there is some skepticism. Here's what President Trump had to say about what his former predecessor did when he spoke to the summit yesterday.
And I guess I shouldn't apologize, but I do apologize for the fact the United States, the last administration, pulled out of the Paris Accords and put us sort of behind the eight ball.
One fresh reason for skepticism, those new comments overnight from Senator Joe Manchin saying he is not ready to say he is going to vote for that Democratic spending bill that includes basically all of the climate provisions that President Biden is counting on to deliver on U.S. goals. So we are watching closely to see how world leaders are reacting today to that, given the fact that Biden has been talking up his Build Back Better agenda ever since he got to Scotland.
All right. Josh Letterman. Josh, thanks so much.
Now, House Democrats are meeting today behind closed doors to try to continue to work out how to pass President Biden's sweeping economic agenda. Senate moderates are pushing for a vote on the bipartisan infrastructure deal alone. Progressives are digging in their heels, saying both bills must go through at the same time. Here's what Senator Joe Manchin had to say about it yesterday.
Twice now, the House has balked at the opportunity to send the BIF legislation to the president. As you've heard, there are some House Democrats who say they can't support this infrastructure package until they get my commitment on the reconciliation legislation. It is time to vote on the BIF bill, up or down, and then go home and explain to your constituents the decision you made.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale joins us now. So, Ali, good morning. Of course, Senator Manchin has publicly spoken out about his opposition to certain parts of this deal throughout this process, often being blamed for being the reason that the whole process is being held up. So he made those comments at a press conference yesterday. Tell us more about the latest that we've heard from him.
Well, Savannah, you know that he has been not just one of the key voices on this, but one of the central negotiators. He referenced that yesterday when he stood at that podium in the Senate studio in front of most of the Capitol Hill press corps and reiterated a lot of the things that we had heard from him before. But certainly timing is everything in the context of what Joe Manchin says. Progressives at the end of last week, and frankly, much of Washington, were waiting to see if they would get a public commitment from Manchin that he would vote for the framework that the White House rolled out at the end of the week. When I caught up with him one of those days towards the end of the week, he said the price tag felt fine to him. That was, in his words, negotiated, even though it was a little bit higher than the $1.5 trillion he had previously said he was comfortable with. Now, it seems like it's still a question of cost, but future cost. Listen to how he put it.
How can I, in good conscience, vote for a bill that proposes massive expansion of social programs when vital programs like Social Security and Medicare face insolvency. As more of the real details outline the basic framework are released, what I see are shell games, budget gimmicks that make the real cost of the so-called $1.75 trillion bill estimated to be almost twice that amount.
So look, there's a few things here. When he talks about insolvency of existing programs like Medicare, that's something that he's talked about throughout this process. And part of why he's been averse to things like expanding Medicare coverage or even vouchers that would help people with costs of things like vision, dental, and hearing. That was a big priority for Senator Bernie Sanders. And our understanding is that at least right now in this 11th hour, there are negotiations to try to keep those policies in, and those conversations are ongoing with Manchin. But the other piece of this too is, you'll remember, this pays for more than it spends in this bill right now. 1.75 roughly in spending and just shy of $2 trillion in pay-fors. That being said, what it sounds like Manchin is asking for here, even though he didn't say these words, is a CBO score, Congressional Budget Office score, that would give a little bit more of a sense of what the financial impact of this is. And all that really does, Savannah, is slow it down.
All right, so Allie, is there any chance then that there will be a deal this week?
It doesn't look like anyone is saying that explicitly at this point, but what we've heard from Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who leads the Progressive Caucus, is a lot of discipline in her message, where she's effectively, every question that we've asked her about what Senator Manchin's impact on this process is, she has simply said, I trust the president when he tells me that he can get 51 senators on board for this, or 50 senators on board for this. Biden has clearly been exercising his relationships with Manchin, and this is how Jayapal put it yesterday in the aftermath of hearing from Manchin. Listen.
I just have to believe what the president says. And the president said right after the senator spoke that he is confident he can deliver 51 votes for this plan. I am going to trust the president. Our members are going to trust the president. And we are going to do the job that we need to do, which is pass both bills through the House. And whatever Senator Manchin says is up to him.
So quietly, our sources are saying to us that they think that this could come at the end of the week. But one big thing has to happen on the House side. In order for that to happen, the Rules Committee has to meet. The reason that they did not meet yesterday is because parts of the bill text were still being written and negotiated. Once that happens, once they're written and negotiated, then the Rules Committee can meet, debate this, and then it can be sent to the full House floor. But again, progressives are underscoring, as they have this entire time, they have to do both bills together. They're holding fast on that.
All right, Ali Vitale, the saga continues. Thank you so much. Great to see you. Now, it's a critical day in the race to vaccinate more children against the coronavirus.
Today, a CDC committee is meeting to discuss the Pfizer vaccine for kids ages 5 to 11. An FDA panel has already recommended the shot, and it's likely the CDC will do the same. If the panel signs off on the vaccine today, it will go to the CDC director for emergency authorization.
Now, this could lead to a major boost in vaccination, since 28 million more children will be eligible for the vaccine. The White House says it's ready for the rollout.
We are planning on some vaccinations towards the end of this week, but the program for kids ages 5 to 11 really hitting full strength the week of November 8th.
But doctors may face another challenge, convincing parents the shot is worth it. A recent survey shows only about 1 in 3 parents will get their kids vaccinated right away. Let's bring in Dr. Amish Adalja. He's a senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. So, doctor, how will this meeting work today? Is it pretty much a given that the CDC will sign off?
I do think that the CDC committee is going to recommend this be a routine immunization for children in that age group. However, there's going to be a lot of debate on which children benefit the most, what risks there may be, how to think about this vaccine in terms of what you're trying to prevent. Are you trying to prevent mild illness, serious illness, and all of that's going to come out in the discussion. But I assume at the end of the day, they're going to vote to recommend this be something that we embark on, and that the CDC director will sign off on it immediately.
And even while we're waiting for that, the Pfizer vaccine for kids is actually already being shipped out across the country. By the way, it's about a third of the dose given to adults. What are you watching out for as this starts being administered to 5 to 11-year-olds?
I'm looking to see what the uptake is going to be. There's probably about a third of the parents of 5 to 11-year-olds that are going to be rushing to get this vaccine. I think that's a good thing. And then there's going to be some parents that take a wait and see approach. And it's trying to understand how that vaccine uptake goes in those other groups that are not as eager to get the vaccine. That's going to be key. And I also want to see how well pediatricians are engaged in this. One of the plans that the administration is using is to enlist pediatricians. So it's not going to be mass vaccination sites. It's not going to all be drugstores, but also pediatricians offices, and we know that parents trust pediatricians, and I think they may do a good job at trying to answer parents' questions and hopefully get more children vaccinated.
And Dr. Adolja, one of the main concerns some parents have, the side effects, especially that rare heart condition, myocarditis. So do we know how often COVID vaccines cause heart conditions in kids, and do they have lifelong impacts?
Well, what we know about myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart, is that it is a rare side effect from the vaccine, but it's more likely to occur from natural COVID than it is from a vaccine. So the vaccine actually prevents COVID-19 from causing myocarditis, but we have seen people get myocarditis, but it's usually not in that 5 to 11 group. It's usually 16 to 29. That's where the high risk group is in males who get these mRNA vaccines. And there it's about 11 cases per 100,000 doses, but these are mild, they're transient, they don't have lasting damage. They can be scary anytime that your heart is inflamed, but these are definitely manageable.
All right, Dr. Amish Adolja, as always, thank you.
Let's now get a check on your morning news now weather.
Bill Cairns is with us. Bill, good morning.
Well, good morning. You know, sometimes we say, like, oh, wow, we're on a roller coaster ride with the weather. Well, today we're taking it up a notch because today we are officially in weather whiplash.
Oh, yes. That sounds ominous.
Yes, I like the sound effect there.
I'm afraid to even move on with the graphics because it's just that dramatic.
Okay.
All right, so let's get on.
Weren't we
with
quiet yesterday?
It's still quiet today. I have to really jazz this up. All right. So in October, we had extreme warmth in areas of the east, and in the west, it was cool for October. And here's how it ended up. We added up all the numbers in the areas that we have the dots in red, including Newark, New Jersey, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Akron, Ohio, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Warmest October ever recorded for those locations. The yellow dots, it was top 3 ever. So now we just got done with that. And now all of a sudden we've started November with this cool blast of air that's moving through the Midwest and the Great Lakes. That's arriving in the East Coast. And it's just kind of a little shock to the system, but it's actually pretty close to where we should be for this time of year. And we're going to get the first freeze of the season. So my cherry tomatoes, I got to pick them today because they are done after tonight. The cold air will be moving into numerous locations. About 20 million or so people under freeze warnings as the end of the growing season arrives this evening. So tomorrow morning, grab the jacket, hat, and gloves. Some areas, guys, in the 20s. So you got to find the winter clothes.
Wow.
It's officially that time.
Kind of excited. All right.
Me too. All right, I get the whiplash thing.
All right.
Makes sense.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.